All right, welcome to Adventure Right Now, Day 4, as we embark on our Hermes the Cat Tale. The Hermes the Cat Tale, the God's favorite cat toy, a Hermes the Cat Tale. And we have made some incredible progress. We're going to be diving into the story. We're going to be reviewing a couple of the parts of Act 2 today, and then we'll be deep diving into Act 3. How will Hermes the cat survive? How's he going to be dealing with the mad scientist cat or vegan cat? How will he be dealing with our crazy tuxedo cat? And who is the mastermind that Hermes the cat must be facing off against? So that and much, much more. If you're tuning in, make sure to stick around because we're going to be developing the story as a community. Whether you want to just show up here and throw out ideas or come write the story with us, all are welcomed. If you want to learn more, down in the YouTube description is the details and the link for how you can be involved and hop into the manuscript. You can work on it side by side with us. And yeah, this story's been fun. We're about 25,000 words in, and this is a blast. I am Kaufman. Welcome to the Right Now community. I'm on the mission to help writers across the world by showing them when they're stuck to just put a dragon on it. That's my new slogan. So come join us because we're starting right now. And this is my co-host, and I'll let
Chat
you
Soul
intro. And so if you want to just share a little bit about yourself with our audience for any new viewers here in the community.
So I've been part of the community for a while now, and I'm the I'm the main co-author next to Kaufman for the adventure right now. And I've been writing a fair amount of this today. I actually just finished chapter 6 today. So anybody who wants to check that out, there should be a link to the document in the Discord. And I believe there's one on the video, isn't there, Kaufman?
Sorry, one more time?
For the document itself? Or is that just in the Discord?
Wait, what's the question? Wait, is the link? I'm like, wait, you said that the link to the video. Wait, which video?
Okay, so there's a link to the document that people can go in and actually read the story and put in some comments for things they want in there, ideas they've got, different things like that. We've got a few people that have been putting in ideas.
Yes. You're right. Kaufman needs to get good at multitasking. Yeah. So for anybody who wants to check out like any of the background, anything that we have on Hermes the cat so far, the link is down in the YouTube description. And I can probably copy paste that, post it in the comments, and link it out. I wanted to throw up so far, this is our heading for the God's favorite cat toy. I was like, I loved how it came out last week, but we still have 2 more cats we're going to have to develop today. So definitely super stoked. Let's see.
But today, I will say while he's doing getting the link and stuff, today we are going to be working on Tuxedo, and we are going to be working who is the last life before Hermes, and we are also working on the mad scientist / vegan cat, and that will be the beginning of Act 3.
Awesome. So I think that is very awesome. So for anybody who's just hopping in or who might be unfamiliar with the story, can you just give a little brief summary of our Hermes story so far?
Sure. So basically we've got Hermes. Earlier this year, Kaufman and the community made a story of Hermes in Purgatory. That was kind of a prequel to what this is now. And with how we've planned it, it's actually tying into that very nicely.
Which logistically, this story, Hermes, the cat's favorite god, the God's favorite cat toy. The God's favorite cat toy is the prequel story.
Yeah.
The God's favorite cat toy is the prequel story to the original story that we developed. We didn't write, but we developed, called Hermes the Cat Lost in Purgatory.
But so we've got Hermes who somehow gets dragged into this whole thing with his other 8 lives, and he gets to meet them one by one as they essentially try to get rid of him. In Act 1, we got to meet the tuxedo cat, but then we got to meet the Egyptian cat. I believe we know her as the Egyptian Viper, and then we've got Parrot, the Viking pirate, and then we've got Lucky, the Diabol, and those. So Parrot and Egyptian Viper are Act 1. Act 2 is the diabolical little kitten, aptly named Lucky. And then we've got Romeo, and then we've got Dickens, who I just finished today. And then it's going to end, Act 2 is going to end with Ginger Cat. And then Act 3 is going to have the mad scientist, Vegan Cat, and, well, the ending with Tuxedo, as well as whoever is behind this entire thing.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. So I think that definitely sums it up very, very nicely. So thank you so much for that. So I wanted to make sure that I had that up there. I think that's a really great catch up for the story so far. I have the Google Doc link for anybody that wants to be involved, or let's say you want to like read along the story with us. I'll throw that in the chat right now. Adventure right now. We'll put Hermes the cat info with the Google Doc link. I wish
While he's saying that, I will say, so one thing that we've been actually able to do is this story was meant to have supernatural elements, which for anybody who's paid attention to the first act, there's not much there. There's really not much supernatural there. There's hints that are thrown out occasionally. It is actually not until Act 2 that we finally get into the supernatural, and Chapter 4 takes it from there's hardly any mention to suddenly you're hit in the face with it. So, and then it just kind of builds from there.
I know. We like, but I think that it was something we were intentional about. Because this obviously the story takes place in a supernatural world, but we didn't want to hit on the head with it being obvious in the beginning. We wanted the focus to be on Hermes and his initial core journey of wanting to get home, and then learning as the story progresses, as we get to the midpoint, as the things get worse, the supernatural, well, I think what we're going to call the mythic wars, which I absolutely love that, by the way, the mythic wars took place in the past during some of Hermes' previous lives, and we're seeing it more come to fruition through Hermes' journey as we're then getting closer and closer back to the present of what the current natural state is of the world. And
Chapter 6 is the first chapter that actually hints at the wars themselves. With the, well, technically it's not like the entire war, it's more like a smaller thing within one of the factions of the typical vampires versus werewolves. We get to hear a little bit about that, but it's more of mentioned.
Yeah, and chapter 5 will hint at it. The midpoint, so the end of chapter 5 will be the first big exploding moment where the first obvious point of the mythic wars really starts coming to a head, and we get to actually see something very cool. If I can write it correctly, we'll see. What was it? Werewolves and vampires and zombies. Oh my! I'm sure there's zombies somewhere in the world. So awesome! I feel great about it. If you want to be involved, once again, I just dropped the link down in the YouTube comments. You are more than welcome. Let me pull this up. You are more than welcome to join us if you want to hop into the manuscript yourself. With where we're at in the manuscript, actually, maybe it'll probably be easier if I show the plot right now. So if where you're at in the plot, I'm finishing up chapter 5. And then chapter 6 is done. Chapter 4 is done. And then we're currently working on chapter 7. So we'll review Ginger Cat today with what we're working on. Sol and myself are going to hop into the Ginger Cat chapter. I know we've seen some really, really great work from the community, especially Mass Toaster has been doing some phenomenal work. I love what Ginger Cat is becoming. So we're going to make sure we're tying off the ends so we can help and work together to try to wrap up Act 2 today. We'll see. We'll see if we can finish Act 2. And then we got Act 3. So what we want to do from a planning perspective, we want to chat about the story elements that we have not yet figured out. Act 2, for the most part, is pretty planned. We spent a lot of last week focusing on Act 2. We're going to spend this first amount of time with determining the story decisions and the story elements for Act 3. Now, when we think about the plot so far, let me pull back up our plotting page. I think we mapped out chapter 6. We mapped out chapter 4, 5, 6 of Act 2. And then we touched upon some elements in chapter 7. I'm not going to worry too much about our Ginger Cat chapter because I know we're still developing it. But I think the thing that we do have to be clear on is how the chapter is going to tie into Act 3. So I think that's the biggest thing. Now, I know that we're working on the end of Ginger Cat. So either Soul or myself will probably hop into the end of the chapter. So that way we can tie it off with where we want to transition to the next part. And by the way, I forgot to say, Bobby, glad to have you in the stream. Like, loves the thumbnail. So glad. I just put it together. There's going to be a better variation of the thumbnail that I'll Photoshop them all together once we have these last 2 cats generated today. So this is like the rough draft of our thumbnail so far. And then let's see, Courtney stopping by to show some love. Glad to have you in here, my friend. We have 2 more cats who need some generation. So I'm sure we'll be able to get some great insight from you. So as you guys can see, obviously I'm pretty good with the Ginger Cat arc. When me and Soul were talking about it and we were thinking about the plotting, Ginger Cat is a very lovable character. Ginger Cat, we have 2, I want to say of the 8 cats, 2 of them are lovable characters. And Romeo is a lovable romantic for a different reason. And then Ginger Cat is a lovable character because he's hippie, monk, ninja. I'm not ninja, but well, maybe he was. We'll see. But he's all these things, right? And he's our game over ghost, so to speak. So
and I've actually been tying him into the game very neatly, I have to admit.
I love that. I absolutely love that. I think what we might be, if we have time when we're re-reviewing the manuscript, anytime there's an end of adventure, I would love to add a paragraph after the end adventure, which just shows Ginger Cat saying something that says, go back to it. And I think I could incorporate that in the manuscript if I have time. If
I
there's
will
a way.
say with the game, I've actually coded it so that if you actually do die at one of the dead end choices, you actually, there's actually a specific paragraph where you get to speak to Ginger Cat even before you technically meet him, where he does not introduce himself, he's just there.
Love that. Absolutely love that.
But he actually like takes you back. He like tells you, oh, you're not supposed to be here yet. And then he takes you back to the beginning of the chapter.
Which I absolutely love that. I think that's perfect for Ginger Cat. Absolutely. So
oh yeah, no, it's kind of like a guardian angel kind of thing. Like, oh, you're not supposed to be here. You know what? We're just gonna take you back here. And even before you meet him, he just doesn't introduce himself. It's a fat orange tabby.
Which I love. Which I think in the I think what we generated was we ended up going with the smaller version, the more Yoda-like version over the fat one.
Pretty much. I think it was that or Gandalf.
Yes, the fat one was just too Gandalf. It's too Gandalfy. Okay, awesome. So with our plotting and our naming our cats, as we hit the end of Act 2, which is our Ginger Cat. So Ginger Cat's going to be a very lovable character. As we thought about planning, not the only way, but we felt like a strategic way to put Hermes through the ringer. In the midpoint, Hermes is going to have a high midpoint at the end of chapter 5 when he's going to learn the truth about Tuxedo and realize, and he's going to have a win. So he's going to win against Tuxedo at the midpoint, which means his low point has to be at the end of Act 2. For his low point to work, Hermes is inadvertently going to get Ginger Cat killed. It's going to be a great tension point because Ginger Cat is a very lovable character. Ginger Cat will inadvertently get killed as a result of Hermes' actions because Hermes has been selfish. As a result of Hermes' selfish actions, Ginger Cat gets killed. Now, the great thing is of all the characters, I think Ginger Cat transcends cats. And I think maybe playing into that idea of all the cats, I almost feel like Ginger Cat might be the only one who's not actually dead yet. So like I almost feel like Ginger Cat might have done something to transcend his mental state or whatever. So he's actually the only one who's probably corporeal unlike the rest of them who are more ghosts.
Basically, he's enlightened.
Exactly. He's enlightened, so like that's why he's still alive, and that's what makes him different. But then at the end of the arc, or at the end of this chapter, as a result of Hermes' actions, Ginger Cat is killed. It's a dark moment because Hermes has to come to the realization that what he's been doing, because he's let go of wanting to help people, because he's been selfish for a very long time, and at heart because he's been running from the core truth, he is then going to be faced with that at the end of the act. End of act 2 will be a low point. It will be a rock bottom moment for him, which will be super, super cool. Let's see, Mass Strike. That works well since Ginger Cat has a timey-wimey. So it's a Doctor Who reference.
I actually knew that, surprisingly.
All right, guys, Mass Toaster, please tell me that one of the options, I really want one of the pathing points. I will write this myself. I want one of the pathing points to be a reference to a phone box.
Oh god.
Except it'll be like a cat. It'll be like a cat phone box. And I want somebody to say it's bigger on the inside.
Oh my god.
Mass Toaster knows what I'm getting. I know it's a total Doctor Who reference. Oh, I love it. So that's why it's going to be so perfect for our Ginger Cat. Now I know Bobby, you're saying now my cat is the second to last cat or the very last cat. Great question, Bobby. So your cat is the second to last cat. So let's before we hop into your cat, Bobby, which is our mad scientist vegan cat. So do you think there's any other things we need to talk through with Ginger Cat? Because I know Master, you've done some really great work in it. And I think same with chapter 5 that I'm working on, I think we're at a point where we just need to write it.
Yeah. I think with him, it's just write it.
Mm-hmm. I think the core story arc of this is where the chapter needs to end is clear. I would love to write this. I would love to write this specific scene. But it depends if I can get there in enough time. So whoever can get there first, we'll see how it works out.
I'd be more than happy to write that depending on how everything else goes.
Yeah. And then Master, I didn't think of it, but could work it in. With what I was saying with Ginger Cat kind of being the only one who's like corporeal or some enlightened thing. Yeah, I think that could work
Toaster, well. Master, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he meant more with the like the phone box thing.
Oh, with the phone, yeah. Yes, phone box thing. Okay, but you could totally do it easy. Just make it like a path. Just make it like a single path. Maybe it could be like a dead end path, but then he can go back in time. I don't know. There's so many different ways to do it. Random idea. You don't have to work it in.
I just had a random idea for that. He could like go into the phone box and like something had happened, and that's why he's like still alive.
Oh my god, that's actually really funny. So Ginger Cat's alive because he's lost in time.
Pretty much.
Oh my goodness. I absolutely love it. I love Ginger Cat more and more, which is why Ginger Cat being killed off at the end of the chapter will be so will work so well because we're building that love for him. But the only way for him to be able to be killed off is he has to be alive. And that it has to be established at the beginning of the chapter, or when we're studying the cat.
I'm actually he doesn't necessarily have to be alive. Now, granted, this is from Warriors, another book series.
Mm-hmm.
The cats in StarClan in the Dark Forest, they're the spirits of cats that have passed on. The StarClan is where most cats go, but for cats who reject the Warrior Code and not just reject it, but like tear it apart, the worst cats, the evil cats, they all go to the Dark Forest. It was revealed in I think not the Power of 3, but the arc after that, where Firestar ended up dying. Those cats could actually be killed despite being spirits. They could be destroyed, and when they're destroyed for good.
But the only thing with that is we have to be able to bring Ginger Cat back. And I think that's the challenge we face. So we basically have to be able to set up Ginger Cat so that way Ginger Cat can lose something, right? We have to have Ginger Cat lose something that's precious for Hermes then to feel that rock bottom moment. But then be able to bring Ginger Cat back in Act 3 because he transcended time, or he transcended whatever. Let's see. Mass Toaster, can you add, cut, and paste to the document? I was like, I feel like you should be able to do that. It's a great question. Mass Toaster, that is that something that is something you guys should be able to do, right? I was like, I don't think that's something I have to set up on my end.
I think we just have to like approve it for cut and paste stuff.
Yeah, I was like, can you add, cut, and paste? Yeah, I think Mass Toaster, you should be able to add, cut, and paste. You should be able to cut and paste stuff. I was like, I don't think that's a thing we need to deal with. We just have the approval for after you add stuff. So like you should be able to cut and paste stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's just you cut and paste it in there. We'll see the change and then we'll approve it.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of, I think, basically what people have been doing so far, right?
Mm-hmm. So yeah, absolutely adding cut and paste. And then I would say, Mass, just let me know if you're having problems. Like if it's not letting you cut or paste something, and we can look into it. Absolutely. But you should be able to. And then Bobby, you were asking a great question. You said my cat is second to last cat or the very last. So vegan cat or mad scientist cat is the second to last cat. I know you mentioned, can he be a total asshole? I think he actually is a total asshole. I think our mad scientist cat is probably an asshole.
Yeah, honestly, my response is if you write him that way, then that's how he'll be.
Mm-hmm. I'm thinking of our cat personality types. So this brings up a good question. So then let's hop into that next chapter arc then for our scientist vegan cat. So let's see, go back into the plot. So end of chapter 7, Ginger Cat gets killed, and then we transition into chapter 8. So chapter 8, the stakes have to get worse. The plot has to get very difficult. Chapter 8 should be one of the most difficult chapters for Hermes the cat. So when we're thinking about this, so what do you think? What do you think are some ways that we can make our mad scientist or vegan? I know we set him as a vegan cat, but I think mad scientist cat works a little better as a stronger antagonist.
You know, honestly, I still think that we should try to go the alchemy route, just because like the whole supernatural, mythical, all the mythic war kind of thing going on. Alchemy probably would work a little better.
So let's make him, instead of vegan or mad scientist, let's make him a mad alchemist. Mad alchemist, and then have him the traits of he is vegan, and then the traits of he is experiments. Let's see, yeah, mad scientist, alchemist, trying to live longer. Because he basically died. I mean, okay, so let me think.
He could have died and one of his experiments gone wrong.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. I think he died prematurely. He died prematurely due to an experiment gone wrong. But I think he was doing experiments because he had to have had some type of shortened lifespan. Right. So he was probably experimenting to do something. When we think about Ginger Cat, we think about the transition of the lives. How does Hermes of like in these lives, right? So Hermes goes from very selfish Victorian cat, where this is probably one of the first times that he starts caring for others, to going to self-enlightened, to then becoming a very diabolical character. What goes wrong between his self-enlightenment period and then his mad alchemist?
What if he's lonely? Because one thing that alchemists are known to try to dabble in is making homunculi. He could have been trying to make a homunculi to emulate a family, perhaps. And that's the experiment that went wrong, because those can be tricky.
I kind of like that. That totally reminds me of Full Metal. Totally reminds me of the Full Metal one of those Full Metal arcs, which I absolutely love.
I need to watch that.
Have you not seen Full Metal Alchemist?
It's been a while, and I never actually finished it.
Very, very long series. Let's see.
Okay, real quick.
Mm-hmm.
So far, this cat does not have a nickname.
Yeah, so we haven't developed a nickname for it yet. I think now's a great point. What are some nicknames we could use for this cat? Zach, I think that's what we need to figure out right now. What are some good nicknames we could use for this mad scientist vegan cat?
Skinny.
What was that?
If he's a vegan cat, so he's not eating a proper diet for a cat, he could just be really skinny. So just call him Skinny.
Skinny. Skinny. Let me think.
I mean that's more of like a physical. I like Max Toasters. If he was an actual mad scientist, that would actually be a lot more appropriate, and I would probably agree with that. As for an alchemist, though, I think we can think of something better.
Yeah, I think with both Jekyll, I think both Skinny and Jekyll, I think I'm just like mixed on both of them. Because Skinny, I feel like it plays too much to his physical appearance, and then Jekyll plays too much to a mad scientist thing, which I don't know if either of them are truly I don't know if either of them are truly a representation. So I think
was just thinking Skinny because the diet thing, and I feel like Hermes, that would be like the first thing he picks up on. Because the first thing he picked up on with our Victorian cat was his name.
Is our mad scientist cat going to be like a sickly looking cat? Like very
strong? That's how he was originally described.
Yeah, I think that's a good
skeletal appearance.
So then if his motivation is he is lonely, which I think that could work. So going from the ginger cat life where he was enlightened to he got to such a point of enlightenment where he hits this next life where he is basically too smart for his own good, and that drives him. I would think then that his intelligence drives him to madness.
Well, honestly, that's kind of how that works anyway. The smarter people are, the less happy they tend to be.
Hence why we go that mad alchemist type. So then his motivation is he is lonely, which what's actually really interesting? This is the same. So if we go with the lonely motivation, this is actually the same exact motivation as the only other evil cat in our of our 8 cats. Well, technically Tuxedo. So excluding Tuxedo, Lucky has the same motivation of that he is lonely because he lost his owner.
Yeah, with Lucky, she lost her person. She lost the kid that she was attached to.
Mm-hmm. So we could almost argue that Lucky was an earlier iteration of who our mad scientist or mad alchemist cat becomes. But now the difference is not only are they Googled 6 famous alchemists, found this alchemy for me.
This is awesome.
How is that a thing? Mary, that is incredible. Hermes Trismegistus. We could totally play into that. We could have this cat have a very complicated nickname.
We got to make sure it's something that the majority of people could pronounce, though, because Trismegistus.
Trismegistus. We could totally do something like that, like him introduce himself, and Hermes be like, "It's a stupid name. I'm gonna call you Skinny." But every single time he has to introduce himself, we could do something like that.
Yeah, because think of any kind of. Think of any kind of scientist you ever hear of. What's the one thing they like to do? Introduce themselves. I think it's just kind of like a scientist thing.
Bobby, you're good. I don't think you moved it on our end, so you're good. Totally no worries at all. Unless you were talking about the manuscript.
Let's see. I'm not seeing any changes.
7, 8. Yeah, totally all good. Don't even worry about it, Bobby. We'll me and Sol are dealing with the formatting of it, so totally no worries. Let's see. And then Mass Toaster, you mentioned Ginger Cat ends with him watching Hermes walk out of the cabin, knowing that is unable to change the past. I think the only thing about that is if we're ending off chapter 7, Ginger Cat should be dead. Like for which actually you totally can do that. So if you want to end Mast, if you want to end off that section on Ginger Cat watching Hermes, we'll write a scene that kills a Ginger Cat off. But I think chapter 7 does need to end with Hermes being alone as a result of Ginger Cat dead, specifically. Okay, so let's see. Where were we at on plotting? Go back to our plot. Okay, so back to our Mad Alchemist. So motivation, they're lonely. They are highly intelligent. Motivation, lonely. Trait, highly intelligent. Creating, sounds like they're creating experiments to they're creating experiments to build their own family.
Basically what he's trying to do is create homunculi. Trying to create life,
creating experiments to build their own family. So then that means that the plot, this one, I think it's probably more character notes than anything. Driven mad. Let's go. Let me add this to our character notes. And I actually think I did this for. Oh yeah, I'm like, we lost Ginger 6. Okay, I was like, something changed her. Okay. Gotta fix this on my end. Chivalrous. Wait, who's cat number 5? Romeo. Where did the character notes go for Romeo? We got Victoria. Oh wait, is Victorian cat? So we got kindness kitten. We got lucky. We got chivalrous cat. Victorian. Okay. So I was just like, I was confused. All right. I am fixed Victorian cat, and that just needs to be normal. Perfect. Fixed. Okay. So vegan cat, making sure that I am on board. Let's see, ginger cat. So let's see, and cannot change the future. So is he a die? We don't see Ginger Cat die, but it is heavily applied that he does die, and this helps cause it. We should actually, Master, so we should show Ginger Cat dying because Hermes has to be at a rock bottom. So this is the moment in the story. We need to make it as horrible for Hermes as possible. Because we actually showed in chapter 5, at the end of chapter 5 of Tuxedo, Tuxedo is responsible for starting the Mystic Wars. So we actually showed that at the end of chapter 5. So I think Hermes needs to experience Ginger Cat's death and then feel that tragedy because Hermes needs to feel by himself. And I think that'll make it stronger because you've done such a great job of setting up Ginger Cat. It's going to make the reader like want to cry when they're like, no, Ginger Cat. That's like that moment of like, you don't want Yoda to die. Like that's the same moment we want to evoke.
I gotta admit, if you want me to write the end of Ginger Cat, then if you want somebody to write the end of Ginger Cat, let me do that because I am surprisingly really good at those scenes. I've done a couple of those in my fan fictions, and they're pretty bad.
Yeah, so I would say, Mass, just let us know what you want to do. If you want to write the ending, because I know you're working on the beginning of it, or one of us can hop into it. We're totally open.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Okay. But back to our crazy alchemist. All right, so I wanted to add all this here. So he is the mad. Wait, what the heck? Why is my spacing? Mad alchemist cat. Actually, I almost feel like our Mad Alchemist should be doctor, probably doctor something, or some like variation of a doctor title. Because I mean, Mad Alchemist, that character type, tends to have a title that they love to call themselves. Like they love their title. That like mad scientist type almost always has a title. Hmm. Well, think about that. Hopping back into plot notes. Let's see. So with the Mad Alchemist, so okay, I just added the character notes over to his character notes. Essentially, what I think the plot that we get for this one is Hermes shows up. Let's see. So Hermes arrives. So I think Hermes has to be lost. So I think if Hermes is experiencing the death of Ginger Cat at the end of Act 2, Hermes probably gets lost. I'm trying to think of what's a good way to frame it. So that way we transition him into this Act 3. I mean, like he.
You know, one way he could at least get there is this is kind of bouncing off the end of chapter 6, where he ends up going through a fairy circle.
Or we could reintroduce Corgi, or we could reintroduce Valkyrie.
I either say we either reintroduce Valkyrie, or it's an experiment gone wrong that ends up creating like a portal of some kind, and like Hermes just like falls into it or something.
Or actually, I think we should do that for the end of the chapter. I think Valkyrie should once again try to take Hermes home, and Hermes is just so upset and so pissed off at what he did for Ginger Cat that he basically like almost swipes at Valkyrie and then causes Hermes to be like lost and kind of like fall through.
Yes, that
and I
was
think that would be a really great. I think that would be a really great way. I think that would be a really great way. Because then it's Hermes' actions basically gets him lost, which ends up in one of the Mad Alchemists in one of the experiments. All right, so I think that could work well. Valkyrie tries to take Hermes home. Pissed off, Hermes swipes at him, causing himself to be dropped into this timeline. Now, when we think about this Act 3, we are very close to the present moment, which means that the Mythic Wars is probably over by this point in time, or it's at its conclusion.
This could be when the Blood Elves show up. That could be a big event that's happening.
It could be actually. We could do that as a plot arc.
Or at the very least mention it.
Yeah,
I say that mainly because that's where Hermes was living at the very beginning of the story in a Blood Elf palace.
Yeah, we could totally do that. I'm trying to think of if we should be concluding the Mythic War or if it should be done now. Because so we've gone through Mythic War in chapter 6 and 7. I mean, 7 we don't really touch on it. 7 is probably more like almost like a respite. But then for things to get worse, I think for chapter 9, for him to get back to Tuxedo, this 9 gets him back to the present moment. I think 9 he has to get back home. Only for the state of the world has to be worse somehow. Chapter 8, I don't know. I'm kind of going back and forth.
Well, dragons are from another world, right? And they come through somehow.
Mm-hmm.
We could do something with them.
We could totally do that. You're like thinking, what would you think with dragons? I mean, you guys know I'm might be
What
biased.
if dragons are the reason it's worse? Not saying like they're a bad guy, but like something happened where they ended up getting involved, like in the end of the wars,
Mm-hmm.
that didn't happen previously. But when Hermes gets back, suddenly there's more dragons than usual, or they cause some kind of event that just caused some kind of cataclysmic event that just tipped everything over the edge.
Hmm. We could totally do that.
And I only think dragons because even if you go with like small dragons, like from How to Train Your Dragon,
Mm-hmm.
they're not exactly weak creatures. Even the
I
smallest of them could have some kind of profound effect. And if we're talking about the larger, more traditional, like, Western, Eastern kind of dragons, then
mm-hmm.
yeah, no, their size alone is going to be a problem.
I just thought of it. I figured it out. Um, Hermes chapter 9, after scientist cat arc, Hermes is dropped at the at some type of meeting grounds between all four of the factions who are at each other's throat and ready to go back to war because they've all had different realizations that they were maybe tricked or as a result of Tuxedo's actions.
Yeah, that could
We
work.
could be at a heading. We could use the dragon. We could use the dragons to make it worse. But I think that's how we could start off chapter 9. It would give us a way to show each of the four leaders. Blood Elf leader. That would be what? Blood Elf.
Well, would they
Supernatural would be
really be the leaders? Would they really be the leader of the fantasy supernatural faction though?
fantasy supernatural.
I think that's what they were. Let me look at the notes.
Yeah. So I mean, I
Folklore,
think.
supernatural, fantasy, supernatural, mental. Yeah, so fantasy, supernatural is the elves and the dragons.
Mhm.
Okay, so yeah, no, they would be
Well,
since
we could have an elf riding a dragon. I mean,
I
like,
could
why
definitely
not?
see
Like,
that.
I
I could
was like,
definitely see that.
and I think then we would just have to have a leader from each of the four factions. And I think that we could do it like that. That ties off the world, but then that transitions into Tuxedo, into the Hermes versus Tuxedo cat fight. So I think that would then make chapter 9 starting off as a fight for the world building. It's basically come to a head and then transition to Hermes facing off against Tuxedo. I'm just trying to think of how to go about the Mad Alchemist arc. Um, I mean, or we could also have chapter 8 be the conflict, the beginning. We could have chapter 8 be the conflict, the beginning of the conflict with the heads of the four factions. Um, and have the Mad Alchemist cat be somehow involved in it. And then have chapter 9 be purely focused on Tuxedo.
What if for chapter 8 the four faction leaders are trying to stop the alchemist because what he's doing is going against the laws of nature?
I actually kind of like that.
Because if you think about it, so for supernatural creatures, the fairies, pixies,
Oh my
changelings,
god, I
vampires,
love that.
etc.,
What if in chapter 8 each of the different sections is Hermes working with one of the faction leaders? Because Hermes actually has connections with all the factions.
he's lived in all four.
So they would all know him, and we can actually use chapter 8 to show it's actually like the side character. He's not actually with the Mad Alchemist cat. If the Mad Alchemist is the bad guy of the arc, it's almost like the Mad Alchemist is the one that's like shows up, throws out an experiment, and then Hermes has to work with one of the faction leaders.
One faction that I continuously reference, besides the Blood Elves, is also the Orcs. We could actually involve them somehow too, because while I feel like the Blood Elves would be more than happy to try to take down the Alchemists, They aren't from this world. The orcs are. The orcs might feel more invested in taking down the alchemist because they're messing with the world. And because the orcs are natural to Earth. And also, well, typically they do tend to be a little more violent. They tend to have more violent tendencies. They could be a lot more willing than any of the other faction leaders to say, you know what? No, we're putting our foot down. We're going to stop this. And Hermes like, oh, hey, I've lived among you. I'm going to help you with this because this guy's an asshole. And so that's why he works with them.
I think that could actually work. I'm like thinking of where chapter 8 takes place. And I'm thinking that if the chapters start, okay, all right. So I think I have a good idea. I think instead of chapter 8 taking in one setting, I think it's Hermes almost I think it's has to be Hermes dealing with some types of some of the experiments and then dealing with each of the 4 different faction leaders.
Mary just kind of gave me an idea. With
Like
homunculi being something that is forbidden, what if the alchemist is trying to make homunculi from different materials found in each of the different 4 factions in an effort to make the homunculi even work in the first place?
One of the 12 illicit magical arts is considered horribly unethical as it creates an unnatural. Which it could. We could do that. We could actually tie this in if Tuxedo and Mad Alchemist are working together. Tuxedo's actually doing it to steal a piece from each faction for the items that we talked about. So but the Mad Alchemist is doing it to basically so that way he can create like a mega homunculi.
I don't think we should do it as like one major homunculi. I think we really should stick with he's lonely and desperate for a family, so he's trying to make one of his own. But the thing is, you have to make one homunculi and succeed before you can create the others. And so that's what he's trying to do. So he's still trying to create the one, but it's causing friction between the alchemist and the 4 factions because he's taking materials from each of their lands. And well, since it's a crime against nature, and maybe also like the 4 factions, like maybe one of them or even all of them could say like, hey, we know what you're trying to do, and if you do this, it's going to cause an even bigger problem that nobody's going to be able to help. Like, I don't know, maybe like whatever material he ends up using, he's trying to use is like something like really powerful or something that's like crystals from like the doors or something, something that would be really specific to each faction. That's not something that would be kind of general. And so it has more power. And it might be even connected directly to like a specific race or something. And so like if he ends up using it and succeeds, it's not just going to be, oh my God, you're actually doing something that is considered horrible and against nature. It's going to have an effect on the environment if it fails, which could potentially cause an ecological disaster.
Which
or
actually,
something along those lines.
I like that. I think that works.
It raises the stakes to something really drastic, which kind of raises the stakes for, the end of the story as well, raises them even higher. Considering who we have as our main antagonist, that could actually work out perfectly because the alchemist is making it even worse than the antagonist thought was going to happen. So that's why they're so desperate to have Hermes, stop everything.
Yeah, and I mean, I think from a plotting perspective, I think I'm trying to like visualize what this looks like specifically. So I think instead of it taking place in one time period like we've done with the previous ones, I think the Mad Alchemist is probably hopping into each faction area and trying to take something with the homunculi. So then to build his homunculi. So I think the way that this would plot out, or the way I'm envisioning this, Valkyrie tries to take Hermes home. Pissed off, Hermes swipes at him, causing himself to be dropped into his timeline. Hermes goes to we could say Hermes goes to be by himself and drink milk martinis into a stupor. So drink milk martinis into a stupor. Hermes and then we could do Hermes ends up being pulled this time instead of by the cats. Hermes is pulled by each of the faction leaders one at a time to help them. Like, you owe us, you owe me. Now you need to help me. So then this would then lead to each of the 4 sections. Hermes is pulled to help each of the 4 faction leaders.
I totally agree with that, but we should also make that for whatever reason they pull him makes sense to each of the factions, because like the orcs, oh yeah, no, they're going to force him to help, but the elves, that wouldn't be in their nature. And like the mythical creatures would be something different, and the cryptids would be something different. So I mean, yeah, we have him pull him, but we also need to keep in mind the natures of each creature in each faction to make sure that it makes sense. But like they're still making him help. It's just it's more like the orcs are like, no, you're gonna help us or we're gonna eat you or something stupid like that. But then the elves are like, no, you're a creature of this earth. This is going to affect you too. And they like appeal to his, nature or something like that. And then like the cryptids are like, no, this is gonna like destroy everything. This is gonna destroy nature. This is gonna destroy more than what you think. And then the mythological creatures are just like, yeah, this doesn't really affect us as directly as everyone else, but we understand how much effect it's going to have. So we're going to need your help for this.
We could do that actually. Instead of having all 4 of the faction leaders be involved, we could have 3 of them be involved and have the folklore creatures be the ones to be like, you need to help and do the right thing. I'm trying to think of the right way to do this while focusing on the our mad alchemist.
Gate. Sorry, super cat.
You're all good. We could technically have Hermes go into, so Hermes drops himself into the timeline. Hermes maybe goes to a favorite, ends up at a favorite spot to basically be by himself and drink milk martinis. Technically, he's arrived home. We could do it that he's technically arrived back home in the present, but he's miserable. So
yeah.
he technically got what he wanted, but he's guilt ridden over not just the Ginger Cat arc, but everything that's happened.
And honestly, the milk martini could actually be kind of a throwback to chapter 6 because the way I wrote it, Dickens actually gave him permission to stay until the next life calls him. And well, that's after Hermes, has enjoyed a few milk martinis from him. So the milk martini could just be like, okay, Ginger Cat died. All this other crap happened, and I ended up leaving a life inadvertently that I did not want to leave. So it's just kind of like everything rolled into one.
So then I think then the way to do that is then Hermes would then be approached. Hermes is approached probably by the folklore faction leader. I think of all the 4 factions, Hermes is probably I think the folklore is probably going to be the friendliest, would be my guess of the 4 factions. So I think like the folklore faction should probably be like Yeti, Sasquatch, Bigfoot, whatever character we might maybe reference during the Ginger Cat arc or earlier in the story. And I think then we use that faction leader to set the stakes of what's actually going on in the world. Let's see.
Yeah, I gotta agree with that.
Hermes is approached by folklore faction leader who shares the factions are on verge of another mythic war. Hermes needs to help. And then I think then that would lead to the chapters. Then he then helps each of the 3 faction leaders. I think the folklore we could just use as a transition or as setting up for the world, and then Hermes helps supernatural fantasy faction leader. Hermes helps what are other factions? Or supernatural supernatural leader.
Supernatural fantasy.
Hermes helps mythological.
And mythological.
Mythological leader.
I honestly feel like with the mythological, we really should play into the. It doesn't really affect us, but it affects everyone that's under us. So, like, they care, but they don't care.
Yeah, I agree. We could totally play into one of those. And then the mad alchemist is technically we're playing into that into each of these 3 leaders that he ends up being forced to help. Forced, choosing. I mean, technically through a climax, Hermes probably makes the decision to help them.
You know, what if whatever he sees with the folklore, like after he agrees to help with the folklore, whatever he sees is like, okay, yeah, no, this is actually really bad. I may not have a choice. So, like, I mean, he's still being forced, but he also, like, agrees that, okay, this is worse than I expected.
With, I'm sorry, so I missed that. That was my bad. Too much multitasking. I'm like, yeah, I'm on board. What? Repeat that one more time.
So I'm thinking, so the folklore, they approach him and they're like, okay, we need your help. And Hermes is like, well, all right, okay, this, it's bad enough that, yeah, I'll agree to help this one time. But then he helps them and it's like, oh, this is actually worse than I pictured. Maybe I'm going to have to help if somebody else comes up to me. And then the next faction comes up and he's like, okay, I saw how bad it was for these people. You guys say I need to help you. And from what I've seen already, yes, no, I'm going to help you.
Yeah, I like that. I like that because
and just
then
like it gets worse each time. And he feels bad enough already that he doesn't want to make that worse on himself. So that's why he agrees.
I almost think that then I think for this then to work, Soul, I feel like that this should probably be chapter 9. And then that we should have an interlude chapter. So I think chapter 8 should be the interlude chapter. And I'll just call this interlude. Interlude. And I think this stuff, Valkyrie dropping Hermes drinking by himself and then the folklore faction leader should be chapter 8. It doesn't necessarily need to be a choose your own adventure. I don't think this needs to be a choose your own adventure. I think this is more just storytelling based. Yeah. I think you or me could write this. And then Bobby, I saw that you're like, good Lord, you guys are making this hard for me. I know. So, Bobby, I think the thing to keep in mind is that by the time we get to chapter 9, so many of the story elements are coming to a head that we have to be able to leverage the supernatural elements of the world with the plotting elements, with the character development, which is why there's so much going into it. Yes. But yeah, so chapter 9. So essentially what it is we're going to make it super easy for you. So that way it's way easier. We kind of, as you can see, me, and so we're kind of having to think through plotting. But I think through this, it's essentially broken up into 3 sections, right? Hermes helps the supernatural fantasy faction leader. That's the first one. So let's, I'll number this one instead. Nope. All right, so let's see. I want this to be numbers. Perfect. So Hermes helps the supernatural fantasy faction leader. Then Hermes helps the supernatural faction leader. And then Hermes helps the mythological faction leader. And essentially that will be the chapter 9. Now, I think what we get to play around with is that since the Mad Alchemist is the antagonist of it, we kind of get to figure out like, okay, how do we involve that? So it's basically Hermes and faction leader versus mad alchemist who's basically probably throwing experiments at them. And we could have the experiments be like a creature experiment, or maybe it's like a maze. I could totally see you, Bobby, writing one of the sections as like doing like a maze. Like, what if like Hermes is trapped in like a maze of yarn? That would actually be super cool. Or maybe
Wasn't that
Hermes
actually something you wanted to happen anyway?
may, and I think that would work. I mean, I think if we
I
do
mean, I'm not
some
going to complain. It's just I feel like a couple weeks ago, maybe even like the first stream, you said
Mhm.
something about wanting like a maze of yarn.
Mm-hmm. I was like, oh yeah, that's funny. I probably was thinking about that. Bob is like, who is writing 8 now? We need something to go off of. Soul, do you want to hop into 8 then?
Oh yeah, no, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, so Soul can do that, and I think 8 will be short. I mean, or it can be long, but I think 8 is more just. I don't know if we necessarily need to involve a choose your own adventure.
It won't be. If I'm I'm
Mhm.
thinking already.
I think it's more
It's
just
not
story.
going to be a choose your own adventure. It's just probably going to be like a couple pages of Hermes just basically being self-destructive.
Exactly, right. And Hermes has to make the decision, even if it's begrudgingly, to then go help these guys. And I think it would actually be really funny if Hermes like we have the folklore faction leader who's probably like Yeti or Sasquatch or whoever we want to do. I think folklore faction leader should be Yeti or Sasquatch. Who was also probably influenced by Ginger Cat, obviously. Is the one who convinces him, and then the moment Hermes is like, sure, or like the moment Hermes finally cedes, they're like, great, all right, go now, and then Hermes just gets like pushed to go help the next leader. We could totally transition that comedic wise. Bobby is like, I was the one who suggested yarn. Yeah, so maybe we do that. Like maybe we play into like a yarn maze for it. I mean, I don't know. I'm totally open on this part. I would say like what's important is we know that it's versus the Mad Alchemist cat. We could make the name Dr. Speedy. Dr. Speedy could actually work well for the cat. I'm just trying to think of is Speedy the best name for that cat? Dr. Speedy.
I don't think so personally.
Well, be okay. So like the cat's core. Okay, actually, I figured out how we're gonna decide. Let's generate the cat. Let's see what image we get from it. So I'm going to pull up let's generate for the cat. Let's see. So last time.
So now we're going to generate what the cat looks like, and we will go based off that.
Yeah, so we're going to try to see if that can help us out. But we're going to try to see if that can help us. So I'm going to pull up that. Let's get the concept, the character notes for our cat. Let's get that. And technically, we don't really have a description for him yet. Let's see.
All I described him was a cat with a skeletal appearance. I will go back in the game and I will check that. No, it's not it.
All right. So we need an image for the following character description. A cat who is a mad alchemist, who is a lonely.
Okay, actually, I did give the skeletal cat a better appearance.
Lonely, scrawny,
young white and brown patched cat with a skeletal appearance.
Okay. Let's see. A cat who's a lonely, scrawny, white and brown patchy cat with a near skeletal figure. Is lonely, highly intelligent, and driven mad by wanting to create a homunculus to be his family. I mean, at heart, there's actually something very heartwarming that we could technically do at the end. Lucky doesn't actually have a transition at the end of his arc. We could actually have the Mad Alchemist have a coming to moment at the end of the chapter as a result
Maybe
of
the alchemists, they could be like,
Exactly.
okay, maybe the homunculi wasn't the best idea. Maybe I should just make friends or something.
Yeah, I mean, or like, yeah, something to, yeah. And zero map, I wanted to create a homunculus to be his family. Died prematurely. We need an image for a cat for a character description. A cat who is a lonely, scrawny, white and brown patchy cat with a near skeletal figure, is lonely, highly intelligent, and driven mad by wanting to create a homunculus to be his family. Is jealous of Hermes. It's his lonely, scrawny, jealous. A cat who is a mad alchemist. He is lonely, scrawny, jealous, white and brown patchy cat with a near skeletal figure. Is highly intelligent and driven mad by wanting to create a homunculus to be his family. Should we have a homunculus in the background? I'm just trying to think of what I don't know what.
Okay, honestly, I get the feeling this picture is going to be really weird, so just use the description you've got now.
I'm kind of scared. Okay, I want to see what okay. In the background, have a homunculus experiment that this cat was trying to create. So do you want to describe? This is a great question, by the way.
Yeah, I'm actually looking it up to get a good meaning. Okay, well, the historical is very disturbing. So let's see. It has multiple meanings. A miniature, fully formed human that was thought to be created through alchemy in medieval and early modern times. The concept of homunculus has roots in pre-formationism, folklore, and alchemic traditions. I've seen homunculi in a few books and a couple of video games over the years, and that's typically what they've been described as, is either like small humans, or I think in like a couple cases they were like straw doll. The heck? That is really disturbing. I mean, it fits.
Oh my goodness. That might be the most disturbing cat I've ever seen. Oh my god. I don't like.
You think this is worse than the first Viking cat we got?
I'm like so scared of this cat right now. Like this one just like some.
Again, that one is. Ugh. The first one is fine. Just the second one is just, oh god.
Oh my god. I'm so scared of this cat right now. I'm like. But at the same time, I think it does work for the character. But it's kind of borderlining Uncanny Valley.
Really? It is for you?
I mean, I don't. But I think I like it because I think it is actually perfect. I think this character. I mean, I don't know if I like skeleton there.
Yeah, let's get rid of the skeleton.
What do we think? So we think the first one's probably better.
Please, the first one is better by a mile.
So let's keep the cat for the first one. Replace the skeleton in the back with, yeah, and I mean I think that comes into the idea of like, all right, well, what do you want a homunculi to look like?
Well,
I think when that comes
there's
into
a
that
few
thing,
ways
because
I've seen homunculi. There's the little miniature humans, but I think actually my favorite one was actually kind of like think of like a straw doll that was given life.
Yeah. So actually, I think if we play into the doll, so let's keep the cat for the first one. Replace the skeleton in the background with a straw doll effigy, you think?
Yeah.
I think it'll give it clearer. Is there anything that we think should change about the cat? Do we think it works that the cat's front limbs are so long?
I think that's fine because
Mhm.
for a skeletal appearance, that kind of fits.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I agree. Do we think we should give him? No, I mean I think that works. I'm just wondering if we should give him a lab coat, some type of
No.
torn lab coat. You don't think so?
No.
Okay. All right.
So
Let's
giving him a
keep.
lab coat, I think, would be a little much, and it would take
Okay.
away from him.
So let's keep the cat for the first one. Replace the skeleton in the background with a straw doll effigy. Let's see if it gets that. And Bobby, you're like, send me the image. Yeah, I'll DM it to you once we've finished generating it. Absolutely.
Okay, on one hand, one has a coat, but the cat itself is fine, and the other just. What do I feel like I'm looking at something from Tim Burton?
That's kind of what I feel now. I know it's kind of funny.
And the homunculi in the second one actually makes me think of that movie 9, which that's actually not bad, but still.
I did like
actually, no, that is a really good example of what a homunculi is. If you watch the movie 9, that's what those are.
So I almost feel like this is probably a little closer.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I think. So I think this one's a little closer. What do we think is missing though?
I think there's something wrong with the eyes.
Yeah, so let's
I literally think if it weren't for the eyes, that picture would be perfect.
Let's keep the effigy from the second image. Please regenerate the cat so the eyes are green.
And no lab coat. And no clothing.
No lab coat. And no clothing.
Yes, I had to correct myself there.
And no clothing. All right. So I think this one will work. Like, what the heck just came? I know, but we're like asking the same question. We're like, what the heck? The eyes don't look evil.
Whoa. Now those are a lot better.
Wow.
Probably have nightmares from the second one, though.
Oh my goodness.
I think the second one is actually better. We see less of the cat, but it's got the homunculi with it.
Mm-hmm.
The eyes don't look evil enough.
I think about what I was saying from the last one.
Yeah, I think that second one, oh god, it's such a toss-up with these two. Because on one hand, I actually kind of like the cat from the first one better, but the second one has the homunculi doll in it.
Effigy with the eyes. And use the image of the first.
I think that's the fifth one.
This series. I try again, keep the FG with the eyes and use the image of the first cat. You're talking about this one or this one, right? I think this one kind of feels like the closest.
Yeah.
Because I want this with this. Try again, keep the FG with the eyes and use the image of the first cat in the series. First cat in this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And use the image of the first cat out of this cat from this previous set of 6 images. Let's see if I can get that. Keep the FG with the eyes and use the image of the first cat from this previous set of 6 images. Let's see if that's enough. The eyes don't look evil. Oh, like the second one gave me an idea.
Whoa.
Oh my god. All right, this one just kind of became funny.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think I think I can already tell. I think for me too. All right, this is what I'm gonna do. I'll Photoshop it real fast because I like this one the most.
Mm-hmm.
But I want this effigy specifically. I think
Yeah.
let's see.
Having it with the eyes just makes it seem a little better.
Yeah. I'm going to see if I can do this real quick. Um, actually, let's. All right. So yeah. So I'm going to see if I can get these real quick to fix this. Let's see. I know that. And then I'm going to try to see if I can get this. Not that one. Because I think this one works well. The effigy specifically.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. So then in the meantime, while I'm dealing with that, so what do you want to kind of go over what we had planned with Tuxedo Cat? Because I know you and I, we kind of talked through the plotting of it. But I think overall we're in a good place with our Alchemist Cat arc. I mean, I think the
I
only
think
other
so.
things we really have to decide is probably who each of the faction leaders are.
Yep. All right, so we did end up going over more of Tuxedo. So we kind of have a better idea of how his arc is going to end. So first is Tuxedo ended up making a deal with a god for in exchange for immortality. Ended up getting the other 7 cats to try to get rid of Hermes somehow. With how it's going, I think only a couple of them have actually just not wanted to do that. Chivalrous Cat, technically Dickens didn't want to do that. He just didn't want to bother with it. And well, obviously Ginger Cat. He's actually going to gain for like the final boss battle, so to speak. He actually ends up gaining 4 different types of abilities from each of the factions. For the supernatural, he gains the ability to shapeshift. And for the fantasy, he ends up getting something akin to the cloak of invisibility. I think it's just going to be basically a cloak of invisibility or something similar. For the mythological, he ends up gaining the ability to resurrect himself, similar to a phoenix. However, the ability, at least what I've imagined for the ability of regeneration, it's not going to be quite like the phoenix. It's not going to be a burst of flame and rise from the ashes thing. As for the mythological, we have one of 3 creatures that he's actually going to like tame and have them as kind of like a companion for the final battle. We've actually kind of settled on a water creature, a land creature, and an air creature. Mothman, Chupacabra, or we're still kind of trying to figure out the water creature, and I have an idea myself, but we're still deciding on that.
And so if you want, you can pull up your screen if you want to show it on your end. I'm
Yeah,
just
sure.
I'm fixing the imaging on my part. I think I can do this quickly enough.
Yep, give me 1 second here. And ignore my buttload of tabs. uh so when Tuxedo did all of this, it brought in the major antagonist who we finally decided on, the Fates. So yeah, Mass Toaster, I think that was you who mentioned them. Yeah, no, we ended up going with the Fates. They are not evil though. We went with they're more neutral, and the reason they're kind of being brought into all this because they are trying to keep balance in the world. Tuxedo came and screwed that up. Tuxedo came and tipped it too far into one direction. So they're just like, okay, no, we're not going to do this. We're going to come in and we've got to have somebody fix this. We find out, and we're going to find out that somehow the reason that so Hermes didn't know about his lies in the beginning. We now have an idea, because the reason Tuxedo does, somehow he accidentally touched his own thread of fate. So when he touched it, that gave him knowledge of all of his lives, including Hermes, even though that life technically hadn't happened yet. Well, when he touched it and he got all these memories, he saw what happened. He saw what was going to happen, and he kind of went and played around with it. Well, when he ends up going back and he ends up stealing the thread, and without that thread, he can't die. None of the other lives can go on, even if they themselves die. As a whole, they cannot move on. By stealing it, he becomes immortal. But the Fates, they threaten Hermes. They're like, you're going to help us with this. And if you don't, or you fail, then we're going to burn your thread. Burning that thread is what causes him to go into purgatory. So it leads into this story that was created earlier this year. Hermes is going to end up facing against Tuxedo, and he ends up losing. Sometime during that loss, which is probably going to be a very short moment, he somehow touches the thread. We don't exactly know how he's going to yet. It could be he just crawls over there and touches it. One of the other lies appears and gives it to him. We don't know yet, but he ends up touching the thread himself, and he learns of how exactly he screwed up, where he screwed up, and it turns out he screwed up when he was Tuxedo. He did something he was not meant to do. Or maybe he went overboard or something. We're still working at the specifics with that, but he screwed up. So he's at rock bottom by that point. Even worse than at the end of Act 2. So the rest of his past lives end up showing up, and it's more of like a show of he's not a good guy, he's not a bad guy. And he's not neutral either. He's a mix of all three, because he's got lives that touch on all three. And I think actually this works out perfectly, because we've got 3 good lives. Let's see. I think we've got 3 good lives, 3 evil lives, and 3 neutral lives or something. So it kind of balances out. And he ends up teaming. And so I think you actually described it in the plot notes as a kind of Avengers type ending, where he ends up teaming up with his other lives to end Tuxedo. I think that was like the end of like Thanos or something like that, wasn't it?
Which I think that actually works out very, very well.
Mm.
I think that'll actually be really cool. Yeah, somebody did like I think that was Mast, who you mentioned, doing it like a Avengers type, which I think is a great idea.
And then so we actually also split up the 3 fates throughout the story as well. They actually show up. The 3 fates actually show up at some point individually. Yeah, I just realized I did not put Atropos. So Atropos ends up appearing in the Evil Kitten's life. She ends up showing up briefly in Lucky's life. Lachesis is supposed to be in the next chapter, and I did not remember to put Clotho in chapter 6, so I gotta go in and fix that. But so we split them up so that they show up and kind of give a hint as to what's going on, basically by what they're known for. With Atropos, when Atropos appears, they're in a black mirror. For anyone who wants to look up the significance of that, please go ahead, because it was really interesting. I love doing that. Because I got to work with a folklorish supernatural creature, which was really awesome. And anyone who's a fan of the Headless Horseman, yeah, pretty much you might encounter that. Hermes might encounter that in chapter 4. Atropos ends up appearing. Yeah, apparently I wrote that really well, which I'm very proud of, because I'm not used to writing that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it came. I was reading through it. Chapter 4 is definitely very, very strongly and well written.
And it's also, and like the fact that it's like where we first get to meet the supernatural, I was really glad I got to write that. I did not mean to go that dark, but I did, and it just went awesome. But Atropos ends up appearing in that chapter in a mirror. and always see her as an eye. But I will say right now, that's what that's supposed to signify. For Lachesis, whatever happens in chapter 5, I will have to figure out how to put Clotho in there somewhere. But Atropos is the cutter of life. She's the one that actually cuts the thread. Clotho is the one that designs the thread. And then Lachesis is the one that watches over the thread and determines how long it is. Together they make the fates. So they're there for balance. And because Tuxedo screwed up, that's why they end up getting Hermes' help in the end, because it's like, okay, this is not going how it's supposed to and how we want it to and how it needs to go. So you gotta fix this. But hey, because of all this crap that's going on, because Tuxedo screwed up so royally, your lives are not going to be able to move on. That after Hermes dies, he's going to end up in purgatory. So yeah, we inadvertently led into that, which was kind of nice. I don't think we were actually planning on that until we were talking about this.
I know, we definitely weren't planning that tie-in, but it actually worked out really well. All right, I think, of course, going into Photoshop, like I literally can't help but then having to color correct it.
No, I get that. I do the same thing with some of my photos whenever I create them. I gotta do shading.
I know. I'm like, I always want to fix the coloring to get it as just, you really want to make things pop when you're doing anything with colors. I don't think that I'm perfect by any means, but I've figured out enough of a system that works well for me. Awesome.
No,
So I know.
I think the story though is basically going to end with the fates. They're like, okay, Tuxedo screwed up. Since he's now immortal and we can't change that, the rest of you lives can't move on, and that's basically just when Hermes is like, okay, so after this, I'm just going to go to what, limbo or something.
Which essentially that's it. Like that's generally the story arc. And I think based on each of the 3 endings, I think each of the 3 endings then determine how he I think will determine how he ends. And what I don't know is if each of the 3 endings lead to limbo or lead to purgatory, or if just one ending does. Or because it doesn't necessarily need to connect. I think at heart they just need to end this story off. I think that's what's important.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, so I got it. Let's go. Which one is this? Doctor. Right now, this is Dr. Alchemist. Dr. Alchemist is my tentative title for this. Dr. Alchemist. Dr. Mad.
Nah, that doesn't sound right for some reason.
Yeah. Or you actually, I literally just thought about something. We could play into it because we've played into this for so long that each of them are different personas, but they are all Hermes. At heart, they are all Hermes. We could play into the name of have him go Dr. Hermes the 7th. we could actually do that, and this is the first time Hermes is actually put up against the true realization in his face that they are him.
I feel like that's a little too on the nose, though.
You think it's too on the nose?
I honestly had one idea. It's really basic, but I could actually see Hermes reacting this way, considering how the cat looks. Dr. Scary. And it's not just how he looks, but also what he's doing.
But I mean, the only thing with that though is that the nickname that I mean, we could do that. I mean, like I'm thinking, like, is that then what he considers himself to be? Does he consider himself to be scary?
No, for like his own introduction now. No, have like his own name, but like I'm thinking like what Hermes calls him is Doctor Scary. Sorry, I should have specified.
Oh yes, I like that. Let's see. I think it I am all ready with this. All right. All right. So let me pull it up on my end. I just finished The Alchemist Cat. Where did it go? All right. So Dr. Alchemist or Dr. Scary.
That actually looks really cool.
There we go. And I think I was able to get that in a way so that looks like part of the image.
It does.
Perfect. So I think this is our Dr. Alchemist. Let's see. By the way, Nell, I saw you pop in. Susan, my cat's name, female Emma, boy Charlie. Zelda. Aw, love the Zelda reference. Absolutely. So I think this is our alchemist cat. Doctor. Okay. So then we have that. And then so were you did you go over the whole act 3 part, or not act 3, but chapter what's that? Chapter 9?
Let's see, I believe so. I just kind of like went over like the end and stuff. So
Perfect. So I think that brings us to a pretty good point. Let's see. I'll drop this so that way you guys can see what we had. Okay. So chapter 9, which then makes this chapter 10, which is the climax part 1, and then chapter 11, and then chapter 12 is a resolution. Okay. So I think of act 3. I think obviously 8 is an interlude chapter. I think we're clear on that. So I'm going to close out this. Skinny and Twinkie. Johnny, like that cat needs to consider eating 2 or 3 more biscuits a day. Like, yeah, that is the truth, my friend.
actually, I'm kind of thinking the reason why, or at least maybe the reason why he's so skinny is he's so engrossed in his work that he forgets to eat.
Probably.
Because I mean, hey, I lost weight doing that. I hate admitting that, but it's true.
Dr. AI Kimness. But yeah, so I think then for this act 3, then I think we're on a good point. So 8 will generally be more story based. 9's going to be the choose your own adventure arc chapter with our mad alchemist, Dr. Scary. Dr. Scary. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think I can get behind it. I just like I feel like there's a better one, but I don't have anything. I think Dr. Scary is fine.
Yeah, if somebody comes up with something better, go ahead. But I think for Hermes, like seeing this guy, it would be an apt description.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. I must have pulled down the image. All right, I'll pull that image back up so you guys can see Dr. All right, yeah, we'll throw this back to you guys. What do you guys think is a good name for this cat? And we'll throw it there. Yeah, so that's what we got right now. Clearly, we're really struggling with this name, Dr. Scab. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if that one works or not. Let's see. So we got this based off who this character is. And then so I mean, and I guess also let's think of all of our other character names, right? So out of our cats, out of all of our cats, right? So I can drop this, right? So out of all of our cats, and I'll right? So that's all of our cats that we have right now. So, and then out of all the nicknames that we have the Egyptian Viper, we have Parrot, we have Lucky, we have Romeo, we have, who's the Victorian cat's name again, Sol?
Which one was it?
Victorian cat.
Dickens, and Hermes just
right.
calls him Dick.
Victorian cat is Dickens. Ginger cat is the one cat we're just naming Ginger Cat, and then we're deciding on our doctor right here.
Yeah, because I mean, honestly, Tuxedo actually finally did sort of get a nickname. That was inadvertent. That was me doing it inadvertently. Dickens calls him crazy.
Yeah.
So I mean, we don't have to go with that, but at least Dickens calls him that. So
yeah.
Also before I forget, Kaufman, Hermes does call him Dick a few times, and Dick's just like, "Shut up." I did make sure to put that in.
I think that's fine. Yeah, so I guess question mark, Dr. Crazy. Wait. Dr. Crazy wasn't the one we went with. You said Dr.
So I was thinking
Scary.
Dr. Scary.
Was the original one. All right, so we'll use Dr. Scary for now. I was like, Crazy is the nickname for this one. Tuxedo. And this leaves us with Tuxedo, who is a crazy, dangerous cat. So I think for now, I'm pretty good with this because where we're at on time, I want to be able to get in Dr. Bones.
Oh, God.
Oh, my God. That cracks me up, actually. Oh, man. All right. So I think I'm pretty good with where we're at for this section. I know with we technically will need to regenerate Tuxedo, which I'm fine with doing, but I want to be able to get into some writing. So with where I'm at, I need to hop into 5 of the manuscript and get some work done. So where do you, because I know we have I know Master, you're working on chapter 7. Let me think. So do you think there's any other like plot elements we need to discuss?
I don't believe so.
Yeah. So I think let's get into the writing. So what part did you want to work on?
I was actually going to do 8 real quick since I was done with 6.
Awesome. And then that'll help you, Bobby, since you're going to then work on 9. So I was going to hop into 8. Cool. So if you want, you can pull up on your screen the part that you're going to work on. I'm going to BRB in just a second.
Sure.
All right, friends. So once again, if you want to be involved, come hop into the manuscript with us and come join us in the writing. Awesome. We are working on it. So I know you're working on, technically, you're working on the Mad Scientist Cat arc-ish, which is kind of the interlude. The precursor to it. So I'll throw that up. I'll leave it to you and I'll be back in just a second.
All right. We just had that. Okay, here we go. So I have the tendency to take things and like put them like in a notepad so I can look at them while I write. That's fine, Mass Toaster. When things happen, so it's fine. And yes, there is a chapter heading up for yours. I just put it up, so. There we go.
All right, I'm back. So, well, we're working on this stuff to give you guys some stuff. Let's see, Chetzel, can you put up a chapter and heading for my chapter so I can go with it?
I already responded to him in Mass Toaster.
Okay, perfect. You already dealt with it. Beautiful, wonderful, wonderful. Okay, I'll let you do your thing. I think while we're typing, then I'll probably just throw in some music because we're just both going to be writing. So come write with us, and let's get the next parts of this manuscript in. And I know it's on my to-do list to add a new music playlist to my pre-existing rotation. I think I now have 6 playlists. I have 6 playlists. More to come. That's all I can say.
So this is the right part. What kind of supposed to do? Excuse me.
Bless you.
Thank you.
All right. So, okay. So I kind of I got wrapped up in where I was at. So I and I did it's interesting. So I didn't make a lot of progress too much in the overall chapter, but I got Hermes out of the cage.
At least you got that far.
I got him out of the cage, but I am so happy with what I created. I actually think I came up with something really clever. I think I've come up with a really clever idea for us to play around in this from this point of the manuscript moving forward. So let's see, let me go to where I was at. And this is something that's very easy to add for something that's fun. So let's see, where am I at? So from Chivalrous Cat, so I started off the chapter with him basically having 4 options to get out of his cage. The comedic option, I think, is the comedic option leads onwards to the story, him shaking the bars of the cage. The dramatic option is a turnaround path, and then the dark blood magic option. So I'll come back to the blood magic option in just a second because it's an interesting dynamic I think could work. The weird escape option is the end adventure. And I definitely had to throw in a reference to Ginger Cat here. It's an end of adventure path, and I'm actually very happy with how it came out. I did some great character development with it. So with the dark path, because I know what's going to happen is anybody who's a fantasy nerd is going to want to choose the blood magic. Like I already know. I just know people. So I wanted to reward people because I think the blood magic, the idea of it is actually interesting. So essentially what happens is Hermes remembers a spell and uses blood magic, right? I did a very interesting, the specific incantation I used. It's called Nihil Domo Iucuindis, which is translates to no place like home, which is like, okay, use that. That's the incantation. Essentially what he does is he uses the blood magic and gets himself out of the cage, which works. So it's actually a reward this time. What happens is after he uses it, there's just there's just like a voice that rings in the air that says, "For shame, Hermes," and leaves it at that. Now, what I said is, as a result of opening yourself up to blood magic, dark things await in your future. Essentially, what you can do, or what we can do moving forward, is if there's a point in your part of the chapter in your story, if there's a moment where you want to do something random, you could actually add a moment that says, basically using bolding like this, be like, if you have used blood magic, this random thing happens. And you could do it as an element of storytelling moving forward. So, for example, let's say Hermes is facing off against somebody, or let's say he's in a fight. You could do a bold section where it says, if you use blood magic, Hermes fails this, or Hermes doesn't path, or on a choosing, or if there's an option path, if you've used blood magic before, Hermes cannot choose the last path. Something to that extent where you can do it very, very randomly. I just came up with the idea for it and wanted to add on a random effect. Essentially what it is it's kind of like a random effect. That I will tie in as that I will personally tie in the parts I'm writing as a minor plot that ties back into his knowledge of blood elf magic, which I think I'll be able to tie into the ending for the weird ending. What do you think, Sol?
I'm sorry, what was that last thing?
What do you think overall?
Yeah, I have to admit, I got lost there.
Okay. What did you get lost in?
So I honestly I got caught up in reading your blood magic part. So
Oh, gotcha. Okay, so you're reading it. Okay, so essentially you can use it as a random effect from this point in the story moving forward. That's essentially as the way that it works out. It's literally just as straightforward as that. And
so
you could,
basically making it like a random thing that happens in the game.
yep, it's basically a random event generator.
Okay,
That's
so
really,
yeah, I can do that easy.
it's very, very easy. I wanted to add another element for the manuscript, and it can literally be layered on anywhere. You can basically do it as a random event generator, and basically it's phrased as if you've used blood magic previously, this happens. And then you could do blood portal opens and something happens to Hermes. Or if we're at a pathing option, you could be like, if you've used blood magic, you have to choose this option. And you could do something to that effect.
Yeah, basically that will just translate into if statements. So
Yeah,
if
that's exactly what
blood
it is.
magic is true or false, then something will appear and something won't, and it'll go like that. That's actually really easy to do. So
I was trying to think. I wanted to add something simple, but that can be added in or layered in to this from the story from this part forward. Because I know we've already written a number of the chapters, but something easy. So what I'll do when I review chapter 6, I'll probably go into that. I'll probably like layer on an element here or there.
oh yeah, well,
And
please
then
do.
same with Ginger Cat, I'll do as well. But then so moving forward for Act 3, we can add elements of that, and then we can tie in the blood magic if they've used it into the weird ending. I think that'll be something fun because we know people are probably going to want to pick a blood path option. Like I just but I did try to have it be fun, so we'll see. Awesome. Perfect. Were you able to make good progress on your end?
I finished 8.
Oh, you finished 8. Damn, that's awesome.
Well, I mean, there was no choices. Basically, what I had happen was Valkyrie took Hermes back to the Blood Elf Palace. I mentioned a couple creatures. So I mentioned there were some Pegasi sitting there, so they were guests. He didn't want to have anything to do with that, so he just kind of goes off on his own, gets a decanter of milk and some catnip, goes to like moat by a lake, and a Yeti shows up. And honestly, I actually kind of went ahead and played into the homunculi thing where the vegan cat ends up kind of taking something for all 4 factions by mentioning that somebody took something called Ever Ice. And the Ever Ice is what enables the Yetis to actually leave the high peaks, which is essentially the Himalayas.
Okay.
But like that. because enough of this Ever Ice was stolen, if they stay where they are, they're gonna die. So their only option is either to die or go back to the Himalayas and get more of this. But if they do that, that leaves the folklore open to attack. It leaves them basically defenseless, and somebody could come in and take some of their land or whatever is going to happen. Basically, it will lead to war.
I like that.
And they have no idea who took this or why. They just know that somebody happened to sneak past the Loch Ness Monster.
I really like that. I think that's awesome. I think that's really, really awesome.
I actually kind of played with the alchemy thing into that too. Basically, and Guy, this is something like I will send you a message about or something. What I'm kind of thinking of is the alchemist just made like a potion of water breathing or something. Because where I was kind of imagining the Ever Ice, and obviously it doesn't have to go like this. It's just an idea. But basically the Loch Ness Monster is what's guarding the Ever Ice, and the alchemist had to sneak past her somehow.
That's interesting. I think that's really interesting. I like that. I would say just make sure to note that in the notes, in like the world notes or somewhere, so anybody who needs to reference. But I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, I will do that now.
Let's see. Bobby was asking, should there be a war in my chapter? Great question. I think in your chapter, I think now that we've split up So you're going to be able to read the end of chapter 8 now that that's finished. I'll pull up here and let's go to the plot notes. So I think for not chapter 8, chapter 9. So obviously there's really 3 sections, right? There's basically Hermes helps the supernatural fantasy faction leader, helps the supernatural faction leader, and then the mythological faction leader. And then the antagonist is Mad Cat Arc, which is now Dr. Scary. So that's our tentative title for that cat, Dr. Scary. Is it too on the nose to go Dr. Claus?
Yes, very. That is almost tacky. I'm sorry about this.
Okay. So what? Let's see. What are the 3 fantasy faction leaders? You're asking, should there be a war in that chapter?
So far, I have a Yeti as the leader of the folklore.
Yeah,
which I'm putting that. I'm editing the factions, the world building notes right now.
Mm-hmm. So we know the Yeti is the folklore faction leader, which is great. Let's think about who the 3 faction leaders are of these ones. I was like, what do you think? So I was like, I don't think there'll need to be a war in the chapter, Bobby. I think what this will end up being is this will kind of be like a one-on-one, like Hermes and the supernatural faction leader work together against the mad alchemist, against Dr. Scary to recover an item. So then I think from a plotting perspective, Hermes and who's our supernatural fantasy faction leader?
Blood Elves.
Did we go with the Blood Elf? Hermes and Blood Elf. We could go with the dragon if we really want to. Blood Elf / dragon. Have to recover a Blood Elf artifact of some type.
I actually just wrote that down to the world notes. So the folklore creatures, they own the Ever Ice, which is required for the Yetis to survive outside the Himalayas without dying. The supernatural creatures are led by a changeling, and they own what's called the White Oak. Basically, what I was picturing with that was this like giant ancient tree that is the source of all their abilities. Plus, White Oaks are kind of like a natural thing against vampires.
So then Hermes and Changeling have to recover like a piece of like the tree or something.
A piece of the root, I was thinking.
Hermes and Changeling have to recover a root from the, what was the tree called?
The White Oak.
From the White Oak from Dr. Scary. And then the Hermes and Blood Elf Dragon, and Hermes and Blood Elf, we said Blood Elf can partner with the dragon.
And what they have is the it's called a blood. Right now I'm calling it a blood vial. Basically, what I'm thinking that is the source of their longevity.
Perfect. Have to recover a blood vial from Dr. Scary. And I think how we go about this could be open to whatever. But I think this is like the core beat for each one. And then Hermes and our mythological faction leader.
Well, so far what I have for that, and I'm actually working on this like right this second. It's actually led by the Kami.
Who's that?
The Kami are it's the name for the Japanese gods. I was actually thinking for the mythological that yes, mythological usually means like the phoenix, the chimera, the Cerberus, things like that. But I actually feel like because like the way they've kind of been written so far, that there should be like divine beings a part of that.
I agree. I think it should be a neutral. I think mythological should probably be like a neutral being, especially if they're the faction leader.
But the Kami depending on like where you go, the Kami I've seen both as gods and as spirits, which I think is kind of like a nice tie-in. It's kind of like a nice midway point. And what I have for what the item for them I have that's being stolen is a fallen star, which is the source of life. So basically, it's like a creation tool.
How do you spell it? I'm not getting anything for common.
Kami.
Yeah, I'm not getting anything. I'm getting kind
Seriously?
of like a Japanese person or like Japanese individual. So what does the kami look like?
They can look like anything. Like I said, they're both gods and spirits. They can, yeah, kami, deities, divinities, spirits, mythological, spiritual, or natural phenomena that are venerated in the Shinto region.
Interesting.
I
Okay.
forgot they were really for the Shinto, but that's usually what I hear when it comes to the Japanese gods is kami, and that is exactly how it's spelled.
I think my only concern with it, I think it's a good idea, but I think my only concern, we should go something that's more that people know about, because I think people just don't know what the kami is my only hesitation, because like blood elf, it's clear, right? People can understand a blood elf. People have enough knowledge about what a changeling is, but I think I almost feel like we should go something that's a little bit more relatable.
Well, what about just led by the gods then?
We could do that. I think that might just be easier. Which technically we could do that. We could do something like it could just be like a god. Hermes helps mythological faction leader. We could just have it be like it's technically he's being helped by like various gods, whatever god
That's
is
actually what I was kind of
available.
thinking is
Yeah.
it's not one leader, but kind of like a council or something.
Uh-huh.
But that's kind of what I was imagining with that. And also like the way I've written them too, the
Mm-hmm.
gods are the reason I kind of want to go with like kami or gods is the way I wrote about them in chapter 8, they kind of see themselves above everyone else. And they're kind of yeah, no, they just look down on everyone.
Okay. Yeah, I think I like that. I almost then feel like then that with the mythological faction leader, Hermes is going to get, maybe he talks to the gods through like an item. So then that one is the one where he's kind of probably by himself, but he's like talking to the gods through maybe an item or they appear some way.
I was actually thinking we could go like, and I know this is kind of a cliche route, but like a pool or like a piece of ice or,
Yeah,
something that
I
gives
like
him a
that.
reflection.
Oh, so yeah, he can talk to the gods through reflections.
I know that's a little cliche because it seems a lot of times people want to go with that kind of thing, but I feel like for this, I feel like a messenger would be worse. But I think, but I also don't think that he should be going and talking to them directly. Simply because of how I wrote of them so far is because they think they're so above everyone else. Why would they bother going to him in person?
Yeah, I think I like that. I think that could work. Then I'm like, do we need to define the gods at all? Or we probably just make them more like a nameless, like an omnipresent.
That's what I was thinking is just
Yeah.
nameless, formless.
Hermes.
Just whoever.
So in that one, Hermes is Hermes works or Hermes sees or sees/hears the council of gods in reflections and must recover something.
Something.
Hermes sees hears the council of gods in reflections and must do something. I mean, or we could do it as a trial. I mean, because that's very like Greek mythology. We could do it that they're basically like sending him on a trial, which is really the lead up to the Tuxedo Cat arc. Or or we could tie it in. If we do that as the third part of it, we could tie that in back to Dr. Scary, right? So we could tie it in to go kill, or maybe what the trial is, go kill the doctor.
Yeah.
And then that's going to lead to him almost killing him and then deciding to save him.
Yeah.
I think that could work. I think then making this more of a trial instead of go get an item will kind of make it feel a little different. So Hermes sees here's the counts of gods and reflections, and is commanded to go kill Dr. Scary. Which I think that works. I think that could be a balance. And then this would end the chapter. Hermes confronts Dr. Scary, and if Dr. Scary has a homunculi, and Dr. Scary, Hermes chooses not to kill him, and Dr. Scary has a change of heart, because really what he really wanted is a family. Mm-hmm. So awesome. ML, let's see. So Bobby, what genre this falls under is this was voted on by the community that it's a supernatural thriller. So that's the genre as was voted on by the greater community. You say you guys are frying my brain. I'm not sure what that means, but just let us know if you're going to be working on the chapter or not, or we totally can as well. Because we have to tie this into all of the world building and plot elements for the greater story. So, but I think this is in a good place, because then once we deal with each of these factions, then we can definitely tie it in to once he's dealt with Dr. Scary, then we can lead and transition into the Tuxedo Cat arc. So I think that would be, I think then we can transition there. And then I think we have we have the Tuxedo Cat plot. All right, so I think this is essentially the plot of the chapter. Chapter 10, Tuxedo Cat. Tuxedo has done all of these things. Fates show up. Tuxedo steals his thread. Tuxedo becomes immortal. All right, so I think these are all backstory things that we'll have to accomplish in this chapter 10. And then the plot points, Tuxedo, Hermes faces Tuxedo. I'm trying to make sure that I got this right. Hermes faces Tuxedo. Tuxedo becomes immortal. The Fates trying to burn the threads of Hermes and all past lives. Hermes loses. Hermes touches his own thread or is forced by Tuxedo. Hermes faces the truth of his past. Hermes faces the truth of his past, that he screwed over the world and started the Mythic Wars. Hermes faces rock bottom. And I think that's chapter 10. Does that make sense, Sol?
Yes.
I was trying to clarify this because essentially this is just Hermes confronting Tuxedo. But I know we decided on a plot point and then that transitions into chapter 11. The fates are revealed. Let's see. Hermes touches his own thread. Technically, the fates have been revealed already. So chapter 11 is Hermes versus versus the fates. Past lives show up to help Hermes. They team up. I think what I can't remember is if we decided for them to all be facing off against Tuxedo in the very end, or for them to face off against the Fates. And then the resolution is the 3 endings. 3 endings. Dr. Scary Bones. I could totally see. I actually love that, Bobby. I could totally see Hermes calling him that. Like, that's kind of funny, actually. You know, I actually do kind of like that. I do kind of like the name of Bones as a nickname. So what do you think?
Kinda. Like, I mean, I could personally go either way with it.
With Dr. Scary.
Well, Dr. Scary, or calling him Bones. I mean, personally, I'm for Dr. Scary with Hermes calling him that, but
Okay.
yes.
Absolutely. So Bones or Dr. Scary. Sounds like we can go either way. Okay. Let's see. Mass Toaster. Are the Blood Elves good, evil, or neutral?
I said they were neutral.
Yeah, they're neutral. I do kind of like Dr. Scary Bones too. I totally see Hermes throwing that out as an insult.
I can see that too.
I see, like, so are you Dr. Scary or are you Bones? All right, Dr. Scary Bones. And that kind of like pissing him off every time. Emily, like, I love the threads. I use the red thread of fate in my Changeling series. Yep. Yeah, we totally wanted to play into the fates. So we thought relying on the threads for the ultimate arc was going to be very powerful. I just clicked for a scene from it. Yeah, Bobby, absolutely. Go. Definitely feel free, add it in, have fun with it. And then we can always adjust it if like it doesn't make sense when we go through revisions. So yeah, totally have fun with it. Go for it. Awesome. And I think that's basically the end. I think we're going to have to decide the endings. I think because we have a lot of work to do, so I'm thinking that we focus on this week. Obviously, I think for chapter 5, I'll probably focus on finishing chapter 5 tomorrow.
Okay.
Is going to be my goal. And then once I get through 5, I can start reviewing the other chapters. And then I know, like, what did you could probably start and keep going into Act 3 if you want, or I know you also have the game.
I really need to catch up on the game. Since we're going to do a live playthrough, I'd like to have everything up to the end of chapter 5 done, or as much as possible.
Which I think that's totally understandable, because you made great progress on the manuscript. So that'll allow me to catch up on the manuscript on my end. So then we can get both them into a good place for next weekend. Yeah. So we'll see what we can get. Bobby, we'll have you. You can have fun with how you want to go about what scenes you want to do for chapter 9, and then we'll layer on elements into chapter 9 in addition to what you wrote. So based on what you wrote, I'll probably get to chapter 9 by like Monday or Tuesday. And then it sounds like Mass Toaster was going to finish Ginger Cat arc on Wednesday. Yeah, and I mean, guys, we're almost near the end of the month, so we got 7 more days to see if we can get through the rest of the story.
Well, see, let me look at the manuscript again, but It is at 28,000 words.
Mm-hmm. So technically, what we have 22 with just the manuscript. And
No,
then the game.
that actually is like just the main manuscript. That it is just over 28,000 words right
Mhm.
now. That's not including all the other tabs on this document.
Which I guess that's actually interesting. I think I was only including the manuscript itself, but that's a really good point. It's a lot of that story building.
No, I mean, so the manuscript, the video
Mhm.
game info, the instructions, the concept art, all of them have different amounts of words on them.
Mhm.
I'm here. I will show you.
Mhm.
If you look down at the bottom, you will actually see right down there.
Mhm.
Those are all of the words just on the manuscript itself. That's not including all the other tabs. I figured that
Oh
out a
yeah,
few
yeah,
days
yeah.
ago.
Yeah, no, which that totally makes sense. I think so far I was literally only counting the words on the manuscript, but I didn't even consider the other tabs. But I mean, regardless, we'll see how far we can get. So we'll see what progress we can make. I think if we can get the manuscript document itself to 50,000, I think that's the goal. But once again, we just do the best we can. I think
With the
regardless of
game, we should be able to hit it because I am already at, let me double check again,
Mhm.
13,000 words.
Yeah, and I think just without even considering the other tabs, I think just between the manuscript and the game, I think we'll hit 50,000.
Oh yeah.
So that I feel pretty confident about. Let's see. And then let's see. You know what's funny, Mary, is you mentioned slim, and I know Soul, your idea originally was skinny. I think the only reason I didn't go with that was because then I think I didn't want to make it too much about the vegan cat, but I'm essentially he is skinny. He is slim or skinny, and I think any of these names could work for him. We've gone slim, skinny, Dr. Scary, Bones.
All of
Maybe
it just seems to revolve around him being thin.
Maybe that's okay, guys. Maybe we just play into that and we kind of like don't give him like a specific nickname. He wants to be Dr. Scary. He wants to be this evil doctor, but everybody else just calls him like, yeah, so Bones, Slim, all right, Skinny. We could just play into that with multiple nicknames for
Yes,
the
that
squad.
would just be
I think that can,
awesome.
I say we play into that. I'll go add that to the character notes because that's actually kind of funny. He's the one cat who like he doesn't get the nickname that he wants. He wants to be Dr. Scary. And then we can kind of give him multiple nicknames. Bones, Skinny, Slim. Yeah, it's that's kind of funny. I love that. You have a friend whose name is Skinny. That's funny. But awesome. So I feel like we've made some really, really great progress today. We have the rest of the story mapped out. I'm very happy about that. I think the last sections we'll have to determine, we'll probably do it on the stream next weekend, is the endings themselves. So like Soul, I know we'll do the you'll have the game. We'll be doing the game test, which is super cool. I'm so excited to see the game. We'll see
I
how
really can't wait
far
for
we're
that.
able to we'll see how far we're able to get on both the manuscript and the game by next Saturday. Next Saturday is the 30th, right? That's the last day of November. Yep. The
I'll
first is
say
on
this,
Sunday.
if I can get my brain to not get distracted for like 2 seconds, I will have 20,000 words by the end of Tuesday night.
Our both of our mutual goal is to have the game in a place that it can be shown next Saturday and to have the manuscript hopefully finished.
Technically, the game can be shown, it's just not finished.
Yeah, I know, because you've ended up doing so much work on the manuscript. I recognize that. But the manuscript has come out awesome so far.
Yeah, honestly, I've actually prioritized the manuscript because, like, hey, I can write the game, but I can't write the game without doing more of the manuscript.
Dude, and the manuscripts come out so awesome. I mean, like, we have what, like 70%, 60% of the story, 70. I think
I'd
we're
say at least
almost,
60.
yeah, I'd say we're probably at 60%. It's kind of a high order to see if we're going to be able to hit 100% next week or not. But you know what? We do our best. So we'll see what we're able to accomplish. I think regardless, we'll have to get into we'll have to figure out the climax, which is really the climax chapter sometime next week. And that's really the Hermes versus Tuxedo chapter. Yeah, chapters 10, 11, and 12. So that's probably what that's probably what I'll be doing. What we'll be doing as a mix based on how our time looks like next week. That's funny, Bobby. How you just described me doing work, gets distracted for hours. That totally happens to the
Yeah,
best of
I
us.
just.
But I feel like we were able to get some great progress today. Definitely keep up the work with the writing. We got one more week to see if we can make it, my friend. We're doing our best, whether we do or whether we don't. The process has been awesome, right? Yeah. And next Saturday, make sure you join us because I really want to see the game. I really want to see.
I'm super excited for that.
I'm excited for the game, and then I'm excited to see how the climax of the story actually comes out, like with all the cats together. Like, so we're gonna have to figure out who's writing that because like we have all like the cats in one, all the cats in one. There's so many cool things.
I think
Hermes
we're
versus
gonna have
Tuxedo,
to take
all
turns
the
on
cats
that
together.
because, like,
Hermes versus Fate. There's so many cool things in it. Like, I don't even know what I want to write. I want to write all of it. I know.
Okay,
you
well,
want to
I will
write
say
it.
this:
Cool.
I think the action scenes should go to me.
I agree.
Just because I apparently I do well at them, but everything else I'll leave to you.
I'll do the character development. I love it. I absolutely love it. I approve. Oh man, dude, I'm especially like thinking about this action sequence with all 8 of the cats.
Oh, that's gonna be interesting.
Dude, that's gonna be cool. I'm stoked. All right. So I think that brings us to a good place, my friends. Thank you for joining us today. We had a very, very great day, and we'll see how next week turns out. If you have any questions about Hermes the cat, once again, feel free to message us over on Discord. If you're not part of the Discord, it's linked down in the YouTube description below. Come join us. But this has been Adventure Right Now, day 4. We'll see you next Saturday for day 5. And that's all that I got for you today. I'm Kaufman, and this is
Chat Soul.
And we'll catch you on the mark.